Hi, I'm Peter Dunsmore, and in this video series I'm going to show you how to make this box for getwoodworking.com. Now the box is assembled, you can see the advantage of using the one length of timber, because the grain flows through like this. Pick it up on the corner, right the way through this corner and to the last corner. But on this one it's worked out quite well, because on the end of the two planks where it shouldn't marry up, it does actually marry up quite well, which is that one there, and that's pure coincidence. But sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. But the important one is the two front corners, which is here and here. So when you view the box, it actually looks as though it's made out of one piece of timber, which it is. Now, there's the top we made earlier. And what I've done here is just join two pieces of timber together to make up the top, because of the timber's not wide enough. So we've made it in two parts, and it's at this point you have a look at it and say, do you want it to fit this way or this way or that way? Have a look at the grain and see what actually suits the box best. And the way I'd worked it out was putting it in this way, because there was a very slight green tint here in the cherry, following through to the green tint here, and that seemed to work quite well. So there's a top in place, like that. And now we've decided how we're going to put it in. We'll actually put some glue and we can put it in permanently. So what we need, a little bit of PVA, not so much that it oozes down the inside of the box when the top is in, but just enough to hold it, and just smear it up the edges and into the corners. Because although the box is held together with rebate joints, which isn't, it's not the strongest of joints, you're actually relying on the lid and the base holding it together for strength. The advantage of this method is very, very simple to make this box, and very effective. So if we just pop this in, there we go, press it down, and now you can see why the rebates were cut shallower than the thickness of the top. Now, this top's 9mm thick, and I've cut the rebates on the inside of the box at 6mm. That leaves the 3mm overhang, or the 3mm rebate, all the way around, in the same way that we did the sides, and that's 3mm square. And that allows me to put this 3mm black stringing in place like this, and that's a fairly standard size inlay lining. You can buy them in 1mm square, 2mm square and 3mm square. If you're accurate with your cuts on the router, that will fit in with barely any sanding afterwards. And if you have a look and zoom in here, you'll see just here, that's a nice little square that just joins up nicely. If you see that? Right, if we turn the box upside down and have a look in here, although this appears to be a really shallow rebate, it's only 3mm deep. It's exactly the same principle that I've got a piece of 6mm plywood that then fits in here with a 3mm rebate, and in the same way we end up with a rebate to fit that stringing in place. Now, something that's worth doing as well, plywood's easily cut to size on the table saw just to fit neatly in there, but it's worthwhile putting the bays onto here first. In that way you can glue it in place and actually end up with a really neat join from the bays onto the inside of the box. Otherwise what happens, you end up cutting the bays, trying to squeeze it into the corners and laying it flat in the bottom once the box has been cut open, and it's not the easiest of jobs. So put your bays on first, put some glue in here, same as above, but be a little bit careful keeping it away from the edges, the inside edges, because you don't really want the glue oozing out onto the bays and ruining it. Keep the glue away from the edge, but put it into the corners of the rebate like that. So make sure it's well covered. That's it. Now get the base and just pop it in there. That's it. And then what we do, I use some clamps and we can just clamp that down and then put it aside to dry, and we'll come back to it shortly. I'm just using some F clamps or G clamps or H clamps, whatever you want to call them, just some clamps just to secure the top down to the base, and you don't need it tight, just enough to hold it in place. That's it, just a few turns, and you'll notice the use of the softeners, just offcuts of MDF. That's all you need, just bits that would otherwise go in the bin, and they stop the clamp from denting the wood. That's it. It's more important on the actual top, which is a bit that's seen rather than the underneath, because ultimately this will have a piece of green baize on it anyway. But if you look here, you don't want any sort of dents in the corners of the wood, because this timber's cherry and it's not the hardest of woods and would mark quite easily. And I think the next thing is we'll put this aside to dry like this, and when that's dry we'll start working on the putting the stringing in place.